So what is going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video where today what I wanted to do was talk about the recent controversy. Yes, you guessed it. Oh, controversy in the zombies community. Who would have thought it? To do with Syndicate and his faked 115 run. This has been known for quite a while. I think the last video I saw about this was, I don't know, I feel like a year ago. So it's been pretty much proven at this point. But I just saw on YouTube Called Jobs uploaded a really good video titled How Syndicate Faked His Black Ops Zombies World Record. I definitely recommend you check it out. I will leave the link to it down in the description, where he gives a little bit more information and evidence compared to what we had previously, even though I would say it was a done deal that, yes, it was a faked run. So even though this new video has brought it all back up again, I was pretty convinced about it a year ago anyway, but I never made a video about it or spoke about it because I really don't care. My opinion has always been, and this might differ to a lot of people, but zombies, especially in this scenario, is a solo game. You're not competing against other players. It's not MP. You're not competing for cash. Really, the only thing you get out of getting high rounds on solo zombies is placing yourself on the zombies world records on the leaderboards, which are community driven, and that goes for the rules, what you are and aren't allowed to do in order to make it onto the world records leaderboards. And this might just be because I personally don't care about high rounds and zombies, but I do know there is a big community for it, so perhaps I really do differ in this instance. But because his 115 run was solo, he's not competing against anyone, he's not cheating anyone out of a competition prize. It's not like cheating on a multiplayer game where you're ruining other people's experiences. You're not hurting other players, it's just you versus the AI. That's how, from a game point of view, I've always seen it. And what I mean by game point of view is I think there's two different ways to look at this. From the gameplay side, which besides from getting your name higher up on the world records doesn't hurt anyone, but there's also the YouTube side to it. That 115 run back in the day on Black Ops 1 did help to make Tom one of the biggest, not only zombies YouTubers, but YouTubers overall. And it's from that point of view I think there's more of an argument. The bigger you are on YouTube, the more likely your videos are going to get seen over people who aren't as big. And if it was a video that you made that helped you to get that big, but that video was deceiving or a lie, and people tuned in to watch it because of that lie, that to me is the argument that I'd be more aligned with, because then you potentially are not hurting people, I'd say, but it's less of a level playing field. If you made a video that got you millions of views, by the way, this 115 video was, I think, his third most viewed video on the channel, it definitely would have helped Syndicate to get to where he is now. People watched that video because they thought it was legit and at the time was extremely impressive, and by my standards, it still is. I think the highest round I've ever gotten up to in zombies was round 50. And I do want to clarify, that was by choice, I didn't go down. I just find high rounds extremely boring, so whenever I've gotten to round 50, I've just had enough, and I cap it off there. So I can understand the amount of time and effort it takes, which is why it is a rare occurrence that people get up to round 100 plus. Round 115 back in 2010 was extremely impressive, which is why people watched that video. But to know now that it was essentially cheated, not all of it, which I'll show you in just a second, makes it less impressive. But to someone who doesn't care about high rounds, which a lot of people do, and I know a lot of people also don't, I'm not really bothered. You cheated on a solo game and uploaded it to YouTube. Okay. Yeah, like I said, Called Jobs uploaded a really good video on it. I just want to show you a couple of clips in case you are confused as to, well, what the hell am I going on about? How exactly did he cheat? Well, like I said, and as Cole says, check his full video out because I'm not going to show you all of it. But back in the day when BO1 was new, Tom uploaded a bunch of videos, a series of him getting up to round 115 on Kino Dead Totem. The problem is, though, he acted as if it was one game, starting from round 0, getting all the way up to round 115. But since then, people have debunked that it wasn't one game. He ended up going down about halfway through, and instead of restarting the game and getting back up to that round and then up to round 115 legitly, he cheated his way back up to the round he downed on. He then acted as if it was the same game and then cheated his way to round 115. And these few discrepancies, there are a couple more that Carl talks about, pretty much proves that.
On his round 68 video, we can see that he is playing as the character Nikolai, but in the very next video, round 71, he's now playing as Takio. It's important to note that it's impossible to change characters mid-run, so these videos are definitely from completely different games. When confronted with this, Syndicate's excuse is quite frankly amazing. According to Syndicate, sometime after he uploaded his round 68 video, his game crashed, so he had to start a brand new game. Then, when he got back past his previous run, he pretended it was the same run. He did this for literally no reason, and didn't even mention it at the time. Despite legitimately getting up to the same round again, he felt the need to lie and tell the same story about being downed and losing Mule Kick, even though, as we'll discuss later, this didn't even apply to his current game. It doesn't make any logical sense, and quite frankly, it's basically impossible for this story to be true.
So as Carl says, since the series was split into several parts, which back then was normal, nowadays it wouldn't be. If you were going for a high round, you'd upload the whole video as one clip, but back then, in 2010, 2011, it wasn't really possible, so he had to upload his run in clips, for example, going from round 0 to 20, that was one series, then round 21 to 40, that was the next video, then round 41 to 60, for example. But for his first few videos, as he was getting up to round 68, he was playing as Nikolai, and then in his next video, which was on round 71, he was playing as a totally different character, which was Takeo. Now, anyone familiar with zombies knows that this isn't possible. You can't change your characters mid-game. The character that you start with on round 1 is the character that you play as all the way through to the end, so to switch characters mid-game isn't possible, and the only scenario that you're left with is you must have died and then restarted. And because Syndicate never mentioned anywhere in that 115 run that he got downed and had to restart and get back up to the round he downed on, he never mentioned that. He pretended it was one whole run, which clearly it wasn't. You can't change your character in the same game. Him pretending it was one whole game was obviously a lie. Now, years later, when he was confronted about it, he did kind of clear it up or give his excuse. He said the reason for him playing different characters was because his game crashed after round 69. So once he posted that video, he had to redo the run again and pick up where he left off. So that was him clearing up the confusion. The only question you're left wondering is, well, why wouldn't you just mention that in the video? If your game crashes, surely it's not that big of an issue. Perhaps it is when it comes to the world record side. Whether he was bothered about that back in the day, I'm not too sure, or whether he was just bothered about having the record on YouTube. But for me, your game crashing isn't that big of an issue. If I was in that situation, I would just say, guys, my game crashed, but I got back up to the round that I was on. Of course, the problem is then, well, do you believe that? It could just be that he actually died instead of his game crashing and then had to get back up to the round. Either way, honestly, I don't really care. To pretend that it's the same game, I think is a little bit unnecessary, but if he got back up to that round legitly, then I don't see a problem. However, apparently he didn't, as Carl proves in this next clip.
A reasonable theory to have is that Syndicate did legitimately get to round 69 before either dying or his game crashed. The end of the legitimate game is probably the footage he uploaded first. Beyond that, he decided to cheat by modding his way through to the later rounds. And there is substantial circumstantial evidence to support this theory. Mind you, this circumstantial evidence doesn't prove he cheated, we have already done that. All this extra evidence does is try to explain how he cheated. The first piece of evidence is that in his later rounds, it shows that he has not purchased any of the wall weapons that are normally purchased at the very early stages. When you begin the game, you only have a pistol, and generally, one of the first things you do is buy a better weapon off the wall in the starting room, or in an adjacent room. You can tell if a weapon has been purchased before because it will pop out of the wall. In Syndicate's later rounds, he hasn't done this, which makes sense if he just skipped the early rounds. These starting weapons are essentially useless later on, so if you do skip the early rounds, it makes sense they are never bought again. When Who Needs Jug brought this up in his original Expose video, people claimed this isn't suspicious because they themselves don't buy these starting guns, which might be a reasonable defense. However, we know this isn't the case with Syndicate. In his round 68 video, we actually do see one of these starting room guns, and we can clearly see that it had been purchased. So purchasing this starting weapon was part of his strategy. It makes absolutely no sense for it not to have been purchased when we see it in his later rounds, unless of course he skipped the early rounds completely.
So Carl shows that on Syndicate's second run after he went down and then pretended it was the same game, you notice that on round 81 he hasn't brought any of the starting weapons, which you will know if you play Canada Toten isn't totally unusual, but most people either buy the M14 or the Olympia, so to not buy those two starting weapons, you could ask the question why, but I would say for experienced zombies players, a lot of people won't do that. They'll just use the M1911 and the knifing strategy to get as many points as possible, open one of the doors, and then buy a more powerful weapon in the next room. I've done it plenty of times, so not buying the Olympia or the M14 isn't that weird to me. But it is, because you can see on his round 68 video he had purchased the Olympia, yet you go to his round 81 video and the Olympia hadn't been purchased. Once you buy a weapon off the wall in Black Ops 1 Zombies, it then appears there as the actual weapon instead of the chalk drawing. And so for it to appear on the wall on round 68 but then disappear on round 81 just isn't possible. Which must mean, according to Colin, I only say that because I don't know the ins and outs of modding your way through rounds in zombies. I really know nothing about it, but it seems the only way that this scenario is possible is if you mod your way through the early rounds, if you force the game to start you on a specific round that isn't round 1. There are other discrepancies that Cole talks about, which I will leave you guys to go and watch his video if you want to find out the rest, but pretty much as he says here.
Ultimately, Syndicate Zombies run is cheated. It consists of various different games spliced together, and he almost certainly used commands to give himself weapons, points, and to help him progress through rounds. He then recorded commentary where he lied multiple times about what happened during his game in order to make it more believable. 9 years later, he was still lying about his cheated run and trying to profit from it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it has been 9 years. 9 years and probably like a week to the date that I got to round 115, aka the famous 116 run that I did in Call of Duty Zombies way back in the day. Now you might be like, oh, why? What's going on here? You're going to redo it? You're going to go back all that way? And the answer is, hell no, because that was one of the most insanely mind-numbing things I have ever done. However, there was a remastered version of Kino de Toten in Black Ops 3 Chronicles. So I decided to pay homage 9 years later. We're going to get to round 115 again. Now I know everyone's going to be like, you probably used the powerful gobblegums and all this and all that. And the answer is yes. Yes, I did. Because I didn't want to spend 3 days and my mind going numb doing it again.
Then in 2021, when he was called out for cheating, he lied again and made up some brand new ridiculous story. I mean, come on, at the end of the day, it's not a big deal if Syndicate faked a run back in 2011 in order to grow his YouTube channel. He was young, and young people can do dumb things. But to keep the lie going for over a decade, even when he's much older and even when the proof is there, is pretty insane. I guess what I'm trying to say is just admit it.
And that's where I would kind of ask the question, well, would you admit it? Personally, I don't think it's that huge of a deal because, as I've mentioned many times, it's a solo game. You're not hurting anyone else from a gameplay point of view. You're not cheating people out of money for a competition or ruining other players' experiences because you're playing against AI, not real people. If that was the case, it would be totally different, but it's solo zombies. Cheating your way through the rounds hurts no one. But then, of course, there's also the YouTube point of view, which there's no doubt in saying his round 115 video did boost him up through the YouTube ranks, which brings in more views, which brings in more money. I then ask the question, do I really care? And I still say no, honestly. If you're into high rounds, it's probably definitely disappointing, but for someone who doesn't care about that, to me this is more entertaining drama than me being like, really? I'm angry or disappointed. This is just more entertainment in the zombies community, in my opinion, which you can never get enough of. I've watched Syndicate for a very long time. I don't, and to be honest, I've never really watched his gaming videos, his zombies videos. I did used to watch a lot of his streams, and I still watch his vlogs now. I like him, I don't know him, I've never spoken to the guy, even though we both do zombies content. I have no reason to stick up for him, and at the same time to say anything bad about him. I can only say that I honestly don't care. It doesn't change my opinion on him anyway, because it's a game. I'd say that exact same thing for anyone, even my worst enemy. If you cheat on a video game, good for you. So yeah, there we go. Definitely check out Cole's video, there's a lot more to it if you're interested in that. Thank you all for watching the video today, make sure you drop a like rating if you've enjoyed, subscribe, and we'll see you all in the next one. Until then, goodbye.